Hi guys, how are ya? Back again with Plant Sessions. My name is Kristen. I am one of the founders of Tula, and this is a part of a multiple series of ugly plants and how to bring them back to a beautiful state of life. My lovely analogy is the ugly duckling to beautiful swan. I always believe that you can bring a plant back. I don't know, I also hate throwing plants away, so I'm sharing with you the ideas that we practice here at Tula and trying to bring back plants that aren't looking so good. And also it's gonna happen, it's inevitable. Plants, there's no guarantee, they're alive, and indoor environments are tough when you don't have a greenhouse. So what are ways that we can share with each other, little tricks of the trade to either salvage a dying plant or keep a piece of a dead plant, or maybe, it's just about moving it to more sun. So that's the majority of problems that we always hear, is really plants just like starting to decline and really not knowing what to do about that. And more often than not, it's a water light ratio issue, and usually that's pretty easy fix, at least if you have more sun and if you can either water less or water more. So today I have a few more examples that I want to show you. This is a bird's nest fern, and this is a maidenhair fern. Both of these guys don't look terrible, but they're not looking their best. They're not living their best fabulous life. So this maidenhair fern, usually its leaves are more succulent and more firm, and also standing up a little bit higher. This guy is very thirsty, and so there's a few things that have been going on with this plant that I recognize and that I'll share with you. And the same thing with this maidenhair. And ferns are hard, okay? The bird's nest fern is the easiest fern to keep alive indoors. This is bird's nest, this is maidenhair. Bird's nest, yay, easier. Maidenhair, diva. So this variety of maidenhair is, there's just basically some pruning that we need to do, and then we need to get into a consistent care cycle of this guy and give it a little bit more sun. So let's start with this guy. What happened here? Well, first of all, it's really thirsty. I just pulled it right out of its pot, you see? Ba-boom! There's no resistance. There's no moisture in this root ball. It's so thirsty. It's like cracking. Well, it's so thirsty. So first and foremost, we need to water this plant. Secondly, and once we water it, see this foliage, how it looks thin and it's definitely wilted? Once we water it, the foliage will start perking back up, and it's gonna start filling out again to look a little bit more succulent. And it needs a little bit more sun. So while I have it out of its pot, I'm going to prune. One of my favorite things to do is prune. I'm going to prune these bottom leaves that aren't looking so good. And especially when you have a really thirsty plant, pruning is really important to get rid of any really damaged leaves that are definitely not going to come back, because each leaf represents energy and work for the plant to keep hydrated and to keep alive. So all these leaves are work for the plant to keep hydrated. So if you take off a few leaves, then you're giving the plant, you're saving the plant some energy. And what we want to do is we want this plant to really focus on what's really healthy and left. So let's make it easier for it. Let's lighten the load. So I'm gonna put it back in this pot, poor thing, and then I'm gonna look at the tips of these leaves. One very, very telltale sign that a plant has been left to dry for too long is that its tips start to turn brown. Here's a really a good kind of trick of the trade. If you start to see damage from the out in on a plant, for example, dry tips that's from the out in, that's an external problem. That means that either the air is too dry or that there's not enough moisture in the plant, so it's starting to die from the tip out, because it's gonna go out in. Hopefully that makes sense. If there's an issue happening in the roots, like the root ball has been overwatered or there's a bacteria or a fungus in the roots, you're usually gonna see signs in to out. So you're going to either see the core of the plant starting to rot, and then you basically, you've killed your plant. We talked about that in previous sessions of the ugly plant theme. Or you're gonna see spots, like fungal spots, on the surface of the leaf starting to spread out. That's usually an internal problem, not an external problem. So external problem is moisture. Internal problem can be moisture also, but it's usually fungus or rot, which can be caused by moisture. But external, you can do something about. Internal is usually too far gone. So let's get back to it. I'm gonna prune off. Let's bring this guy back to beautiful swan status. I'm gonna prune these leaves, and because it naturally grows into this really nice, like ruffled tip, I'm gonna try to emulate. I'm gonna do my best. I'm not gonna like do a whole ruffled thing, but I'm gonna cut it into a tip. And basically I'm just cutting off the dry tips, because at this point, those tips are not gonna recoup. They're gonna stay brown. So I wanna stop it from continuing to travel up, and I kinda wanna make the plant look pretty again. Now, what happens when you make these cuts is that obviously those tips are going to kind of scab over and you're still gonna have brown. But the hope is that you get onto a better water schedule, and that new leaves start to come, and maybe in a year's time, all these bottom leaves that you've kind of manipulated, you can prune away, and you have all these beautiful new leaves at the top that have grown in because you've been watering consistently and giving it more sun. So once I water this, it's going to look a lot perkier. So all I've done is I've pruned away some of the dead leaves at the bottom. I've pruned away the brown leaf tips. And in my opinion, it looks a lot better now. It just needs some water, and it needs to be put in a sunnier spot. It's been in a darker spot in the shop, and it hasn't liked that. So we're gonna give it a sunnier spot. Boom, that's it. Ugly duckling, beautiful swan in no time. Let's talk about this maiden hair fern. The same thing is going to apply to this guy. Basically what's happening here is that these leaves are crunchy. That means that they're being underwatered. They're drying from the out in, so I know that this plant was left underwatered for too long, so it started to dry out, and then it was watered heavily because it needed it, but it wasn't given enough sun to work, and so a lot of the moisture has sat in the root ball, so it's just not looking at its best. Believe it or not, ferns, yes, they do sit on the bottom of the forest floor, but they do get those streaming through the treetops, those bits and moments of direct sun and warmth, and that's what ferns need. So I'm just gonna do a pretty heavy pruning job, you guys. This is gonna take me a little bit, so I won't do this whole thing on the video, but I think I did a pruning video a while back and really talked about getting all the dead foliage out of the base of the plant, and then cutting back dried up foliage, even dried up leaves. Sometimes I'll only take the tip, so this guy, so there's some dried leaves there. I'm basically just gonna cut it, not all the way, just down to here, so there's still a nice piece of plant left over. And sometimes I'm just gonna take a little tiny leaf off. And this I'm gonna take the whole tip. This I'm gonna take half the leaf. So you can kind of decide how heavily you wanna prune. If you wanna go back to one of our other sessions where I basically pruned the entire plant down and then made a mini greenhouse on top, you can try that too. It's all about trying things out and not being afraid that it might not work out. It's okay. It's okay to try. The plants appreciate I don't know. I'm saying plants appreciate, I don't know any, you know. But I like to think that the plants appreciate that you're at least trying. All right, so I'm gonna continue pruning this guy out. Another actually thing that we could do if we wanted to is that we could put this plant into a smaller planter. I just thought of that as I was about to end this. And the reason we could do that is so we don't have a mishap of overwatering again, and we can keep it in a little plastic dish, which also really helps ferns, because you just fill that plastic dish up with water pretty much every day or every other day, and you let the water absorb into the roots from the bottom, which is what ferns love, and it also creates like just kind of a natural humidifier. So actually I might do that. I might transplant this guy into a 4-inch pot. I have one right here, and watch, it's gonna look so much better than it did in the 6-inch. Look at how cute that is now. We'll just give it a smaller home and let it start over. Let its roots build up again. There's one thing that I should probably note, that when you underwater your plants to the point that leaves and foliage are drying up, that most likely means that roots are dying out from the bottom. Which, okay, it's not a big deal, but that's also why when you water and you soak the plant, there's not enough roots left, because they've died out to try to preserve life. And so then the root ball that's left over, which is smaller, is sitting in a ton of moisture. It's a really good point I probably should have talked about a while ago, but hopefully you've stayed with me long enough to hear it. All right, guys, that's it. So let's see what happens with these two babies. I think that they're gonna come back and they're gonna be absolutely gorgeous. They don't look so bad. I'm a little picky, so, but I think they look beautiful, and I see new foliage coming in there, and not yet here, but there will be. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Kristen. I'm one of the founders of Tula. Please, if you ever have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us, care@tula.house. And thank you as always for joining and caring about your plants and keeping them alive. See you soon. Bye-bye.